Hey everyone, today I want to do a review of R.L. Stine's Tales to Give You Goosebumps, 10 Spooky Stories. This is a collection of 10 short stories averaging about 10 to 15 pages in length, so they're very brief. And I'm just going to be upfront and say that I really enjoy this collection. I really like these Tales books. Of course, this is book 1 in a 6-book series, and these were rereads for me. Again, I read these as kids, and then I actually reread a couple of these, the first couple, earlier this year at some point, but I already forgot them, so I wanted to reread them again and do like a ranking video when I'm done. So anyways, I reread this first one, and I really enjoyed it. These stories and very entertaining in this collection. And I'll talk a little bit about each story, but again, because these stories are so brief, it's hard to go into any sort of detail with these stories without really spoiling anything, so I won't be going into too much detail, but yeah, let's just kind of cover each story very briefly. The first one is called The House of No Return, and it's about some kids who force the new kid on the block to go into this haunted house as a way to like initiate him into their club. And of course, the house turns out to be haunted, and I give that story a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. And one thing I do want to mention too is that I do kind of curve my ratings a little bit with these stories. A 5-star short story in this book is not the same thing as a 5-star rating I would give to a full-length Goosebumps novel. Of course, I tend to rate these stories with a little bit more leniency. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that quick. And then the next story, Teacher's Pet, is about a new substitute teacher in school who is obsessed with snakes. He keeps bringing in all of these pet snakes and these glass terrariums and putting them around the classroom. And of course, all the kids are creeped out by it and wondering, what is this guy's problem and what is he up to? And I really like that story. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. The ending I did not like, which brought my rating down for it. Most of these stories do have twist endings. Very traditional of Goosebumps to have that. But this one, the ending was just kind of lame. I didn't really care for it. The next story, I'm going to keep looking because I'm going to keep forgetting which order the stories are in. Strained Peas. I really like this story. I wanted to give this one a 5 out of 5 stars, but the ending was also a little bit mixed for me. It at least had a nice twist ending, better than Teacher's Pet, but it was a little bit mixed for me, so I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. But this story is basically about our main character gets a new baby sister named Hannah, and he suspects that she's actually evil and is out to get her, and she does things like throw up on her and ruin stuff in the house and make a mess. And he's convinced that she's doing all of this on purpose, even though she's a baby. And I really like this story. It's kind of got a little bit of a dark edge to it, but it's also just very entertaining and funny. And I actually want to read a brief passage in this story to you guys. So after she's kind of messed up some stuff and thrown up on him, and he's convinced that she's evil, here's a brief passage, like a few pages into the story. A few months passed. Hannah learned to crawl early. Mom and Dad thought that meant she was smart. I knew better. She had a mission. She wanted to be an only child. She wanted to get rid of me. So yeah, I just thought that was pretty funny, very amusing. So there's a lot of humor throughout these stories too. Again, kind of typical of Goosebumps. These feel like very concise, condensed Goosebumps stories, but it works. They don't feel too brief. Yeah, there's just a lot of humor in these stories. I really enjoyed them. And the next one, Strangers in the Woods. This one was okay. I think I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. It's basically about this kid that goes to stay with his aunt on vacation or to visit her or something. And he suspects that there's aliens in the woods. He starts seeing strange lights at night, and his aunt is acting really weird. And yeah, it's basically kind of like an alien story. Again, I can't go into too much detail without spoiling anything, but this one was just okay. I didn't mind it. The explanation for everything, it wasn't bad, but it was just kind of predictable. Didn't really care for that one a whole lot, but it wasn't bad. 3 out of 5 stars. The next story, Good Friends. I really enjoyed this one. This is one of my favorites of the collection. I give this one 5 out of 5 stars. And this one is basically about a kid that has an imaginary friend. And that's pretty much all I can say without, again, without spoiling anything. But I really like this one. It had some kind of darker implications to it a little bit. Like, it's kind of sad almost. Yeah, I kind of like that story. Not exactly scary, and Doesn't have a whole lot of humor to it. It's got kind of a different vibe than the other stories in this collection. But I really like Good Friends. Good story. The next one, How I Won My Bat. This one was probably my least favorite of the collection. This was the only one I rated a 2 out of 5 stars. And it's about this kid who's on this softball team, and he's not very good at the game. And a stranger gives him a bat, like this magical bat kind of, and he starts playing really well. And the stranger tells him that he has to return the bat after he's done using it. But of course, the kid wants to keep using it after he finds out how good it is, and he decides to keep it. And of course, there are consequences to his actions. And that one, I didn't really care that much for. I think the subject matter, that being about baseball and stuff, just didn't really interest me all that much. And yeah, it was just okay. It had kind of a, like, be careful what you wish for type of message to it a little bit. But yeah, it was just an okay story. Nothing that great. And then the next story, Mr. Teddy. This one is basically a Night of the Living Dummy type story. A young girl gets her mom buys her a new teddy bear, and it starts moving around at night and doing things to her room. And could the teddy bear possibly be alive and evil? So yeah, pretty predictable, pretty typical Goosebumps story. Mr. Teddy was just okay. I didn't really love this one. I think I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. It felt very much like a Night of the Living Dummy type story, except with a teddy bear instead of a ventriloquist dummy. So yeah. The next one, Click. I really enjoyed this one. I give this one like a 3.5 out of 5 stars, rounded up to 4. And this one is just entertaining and funny. This one is really not scary at all. It's not really a horror story. I mean, none of these are really that scary per se, but this one feels like the least horror out of all of them. But it was just a fun, entertaining story. It's basically about this kid that gets this remote that controls everything. And yeah, it was just very entertaining. And I also want to read a passage out of this story that I thought was pretty funny. So he's in school and he's going to the school cafeteria. Then I stepped into the food line. I took a cheeseburger, a salad, and 2 desserts. You can't have 2 desserts, said the lunchroom lady. You know that. I didn't even think twice. I pointed the remote at her and punched the mute button. She continued to lecture me silently. Quite pleased with myself, I continued down the line and picked up a carton of milk. Before I went to sit down, I pointed the remote at the lunchroom lady again and pressed mute to turn her voice back on. Nothing happened. I pressed the button again. She was still talking without making a sound. I banged the remote against my tray and tried again, but she still didn't get her voice back. Well, it really isn't a tragedy if that lunchroom lady is muted for a while, I thought to myself. I never liked her anyway. So yeah, I just thought that was funny. There's a lot of moments in these stories that just kind of made me chuckle a little bit. I really enjoyed these. Again, nothing super scary, or they're very light, but they're just entertaining. And let's see, what story is next? Because, again, I'm going to keep forgetting. Broken Dolls. Second to the last story in this collection. This one was really good. This one had a pretty interesting concept. I feel like this one's a bit more creative than the others in this collection, but I still didn't love it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. And it's basically about these 2 kids that go to like this fair or carnival, and there's this tent set up with all these dolls and stuff, and one of the kids gets the dolls, and the creepy lady who was running this, I don't even know what it is, prize booth or whatever, she starts turning him into one of her dolls, and the sister has to try to figure out how to save her brother and get him back. So this one was kind of interesting. I liked it, but this story felt almost a little bit too big for what it had to work with. The whole idea, it felt kind of rushed, and not everything was very well explained. And this one does have kind of a twist ending too that I liked, but it leaves off on too much of a cliffhanger. And yeah, so those little things just kind of brought my rating down, but I did really enjoy this one. It had a very cool idea. It just presented a little bit too much for this brief format of storytelling. So yeah, Broken Dolls. And then the last story in the collection, A Vampire in the Neighborhood. I really like this one too. I'd probably give this one probably a 5 out of 5 stars, to be honest. It's basically about this new girl at school that dresses kind of goth-like, I guess. She wears black and black lipstick and everything, and is very quiet, doesn't really talk to anybody. And the kids at school think she's a vampire, so they begin spying on her. Is she a vampire? What is she up to? Why is she so quiet and mysterious? Again, Can't go into it too much without spoiling anything, but I really like the twist of the story. It's really good. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, guys. Those are all 10 stories in this collection. And overall, I had a blast with this book. I think these Tales to Give You Goosebumps short stories are some of R.L. Stine's best short stories. And I don't necessarily mean just the ones in this book, but in this series as a whole. I've already read the second one, and I plan on doing a review of that soon. And I'm excited to see what the other books are like, if they're just as good. And yeah, I highly recommend checking these out if you're a fellow Goosebumps fan. Even if you're not, I think you might get some enjoyment out of these short stories because they're pretty good. I enjoy almost all of them for the most part. Again, just to recap, I think my favorites in this collection are the very first story, House of No Return, Strained Peas, Good Friends, and then the last story, A Vampire in the Neighborhood. With the only story in this collection I didn't really enjoy is How I Won My Bet. The whole baseball story just didn't really work for me. But the rest of them are all at least 3 to 4 out of 5 stars for me. So yeah, I really like this book. I'm not going to really rate it. Maybe like a 4 out of 5 stars, I guess, if I were rating this book in its entirety. And like I said, I'm going to read the other ones, review them, and then when I'm done, I'll probably do a ranking video. So yeah, guys, what are your thoughts on the Tales to Give You Goosebumps stories? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know what your favorite stories are from this book or your least favorites. And keep on the lookout for more Tales to Give You Goosebumps books reviews coming soon. So thanks for watching, guys.